The blizzard had swallowed the road whole. Snow slammed against the windshield in thick, blinding sheets, erasing the world beyond a few trembling feet of visibility. The mountains of Colorado loomed somewhere beyond the storm, silent, unmoving, indifferent. Damien Lockhart slowed his SUV to a crawl, knuckles whitening around the steering wheel as the tires fought for grip on the frozen asphalt. Christmas Eve. Most people were indoors right now, warm houses, glowing trees, children laughing, wine glasses clinking. Damien had just left all of that behind. The gala, the speeches, the applause that meant nothing once the lights went out. He still smelled faintly of expensive cologne and champagne, but the warmth of the ballroom already felt like another lifetime. The heater hummed, working overtime, but the cold pressed in anyway, deep, bone-heavy. The kind of cold that didn't just chill your skin but crawled into memories you thought were buried. He hadn't planned to drive this way. Not tonight. But his hands had turned the wheel without asking him. Muscle memory. Instinct. Guilt. Ahead, through the blur of snow and darkness, a shape flickered in his headlights. Damien frowned, easing off the accelerator. At first, he thought it was debris. A fallen branch. Maybe an animal. Then the shape moved. His breath caught. He slammed the brakes. The SUV skidded slightly before stopping, tires screaming against ice. Damien shoved the door open and stepped into the storm. The wind hit him like a wall, sharp and merciless, slicing through his tailored coat in seconds. "Hey!" he called, voice nearly stolen by the wind. The shape was small. Too small. On the side of the road, half hidden behind a snowdrift, sat a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6. She was curled in on herself, knees hugged to her chest, a thin pink jacket soaked through and stiff with ice. Snow clung to her lashes, her hair, her shoulders. Her boots were mismatched. One glove was missing. She didn't cry. That was the part that broke something in him. Damien rushed forward, boots sinking deep with every step. He dropped to one knee in front of her, ignoring the snow soaking into his pants. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, forcing his voice calm, gentle. "Can you hear me?" Slowly, so slowly, she lifted her head. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue, cheeks raw and red from the cold. But her eyes were steady. Too steady for a child sitting alone in a blizzard. She looked at him like she had been waiting. "You came," she whispered. Damien swallowed hard. Yes, I'm here." Her small fingers trembled as she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was damp, edges torn, ink smudged. She held it up to him with both hands, as if it were fragile. "Sacred. My mom said," the girl whispered, each word fogging the air. "You're the only one who can help us." The wind howled louder, as if the storm itself were holding its breath. Damien took the paper. His name was written at the top. Not his full name. Not his title. Just Damien. His chest tightened violently. He hadn't heard his name written like that in decades. Beneath it, in rushed, uneven handwriting, were words that struck deeper than the cold ever could. "Please believe her. Even if she has forgotten how to believe in herself." For a moment, Damien couldn't breathe. He stared at the note as the past surged up around him. The cracked walls, the iron beds, the endless winters inside a building that was never truly warm. A promise whispered by 2 scared children under a shared blanket. A goodbye that never happened. He looked back at the girl. "What's your name?" he asked, voice low, unsteady. "Leah," she said. "And your mom?" The girl hesitated. Snow melted down her lashes. "Naomi," she whispered. "Naomi Blake." The world tilted. Damien didn't hear the wind anymore. Didn't feel the cold. Didn't see the snow. All he saw was a girl with golden braids standing between him and a group of older boys. A hand shoved into his, warm and stubborn. A voice that never stopped saying, "You're not alone." His coat was off before he realized it, wrapped tightly around Leah's shaking body. "Where is she?" he asked, already knowing the answer would hurt. Leah pointed weakly toward the dark outline of a building barely visible through the storm. "The old place," she said. She couldn't walk anymore. She told me to wait. She said you'd come. Damien didn't question it. He lifted Leah into his arms, holding her close, shielding her from the wind with his body. I've got you, he said, more to himself than to her. I promise. I'm here now. And as he carried her toward the abandoned orphanage, the storm raged on, but for the first time that night, it felt like it was losing. The orphanage loomed out of the storm like a ghost that refused to stay buried. Its brick walls were cracked and dark, windows boarded or shattered, the old iron sign hanging crooked above the entrance. Snow piled high against the steps, swallowing the place inch by inch, as if the mountain itself was trying to erase it from memory. Damien pushed the door open with his shoulder. It groaned in protest, the sound echoing down the hollow corridor inside. Cold air rushed out to meet them, stale and sharp, carrying the scent of dust, rot, and long-abandoned lives. He stepped inside and kicked the door shut behind him, blocking the wind as best he could. Leah shivered violently in his arms. "It's okay," he murmured, pulling her closer. "Stay with me." The hallway was darker than he remembered, but maybe that was because he was taller now, stronger. Or maybe because childhood memories soften edges that adulthood sharpens. His shoes crunched over broken glass and old plaster as he moved forward. Each step sent a quiet echo through the building. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped steadily, a hollow, lonely sound. Leah lifted her head weakly. "This way," she whispered, pointing down the corridor. Damien followed. Every door they passed felt like a wound reopening. He remembered these rooms. The cramped dorms. The chipped paint. The nights when winter crawled through the walls and settled in their bones. He remembered Naomi sitting beside him, knees tucked to her chest, whispering stories just to drown out the sound of the wind. At the end of the hallway, a faint, flickering light glowed. A lantern. His heart began to race. He rounded the corner and froze. A woman lay on a thin, torn mattress on the floor, barely shielded from the cold by two mismatched blankets. Her body was still, too still, chest rising in shallow, uneven breaths. Her skin was pale, lips cracked and dry. Damp strands of blonde hair clung to her face. Even after all these years, Damien recognized her instantly. "Naomi," he breathed. His knees hit the floor as he knelt beside her, setting Leah down gently against the wall. He pressed two fingers to Naomi's neck. Her pulse was weak but present. Thank God. Her skin burned beneath his touch, feverish, dangerously warm despite the freezing air. "She's been sleeping a lot," Leah said quietly, her small voice echoing in the room. "She said she was just tired." Damien swallowed hard and pulled one of the blankets higher around Naomi's shoulders, then shrugged out of his sweater and laid it over her chest. "She shouldn't have been here," he muttered, not in blame, but in pain. "She should have had help." Naomi stirred faintly. Her lashes fluttered, lips parting as if she were trying to speak, but no sound came out. "It's okay," Damien said softly, leaning closer. "You don't have to talk. I've got you." He pulled out his phone, hands steady despite the storm roaring in his chest. "Emergency services," he said the moment the line connected. "I have a woman with severe hypothermia and high fever. Ridgeway Orphanage. Yes, abandoned building. We need immediate assistance." He ended the call and exhaled slowly, pressing his palm flat against the floor. Leah had slid down the wall, her legs folded beneath her. She was watching her mother, eyes wide but dry. Too dry. "You're not leaving, right?" she asked suddenly. Damien turned to her. "No," he said without hesitation. "I'm not going anywhere." She nodded, as if that answer was something she had already decided to believe. Minutes stretched painfully long. The storm battered the building, rattling windows and doors. Damien shifted Naomi carefully, cradling her head in his lap to keep her off the cold floor. He rubbed her hands gently, trying to bring warmth back into her fingers. Her bracelet, wooden, cracked, familiar, slipped from beneath the blanket. His chest tightened. He picked it up slowly, thumb brushing over the faded carving. "Forever for you." His throat closed. "I kept it," Naomi whispered suddenly. He stiffened. Her eyes were barely open, unfocused, but she was awake, just enough. You always were stubborn, Damien said quietly, forcing a small smile. Even when it hurt. Her lips curved faintly. You came back. Yes, he said. I did. Footsteps echoed faintly outside. Then voices. Flashing red and blue lights spilled through the broken windows, painting the walls in color. Relief crashed over him so hard it almost knocked him down. The paramedics moved quickly, efficiently. Blankets. A stretcher. Oxygen. One of them glanced at Damien. Is she family? Damien looked at Naomi. Then at Leah, who had crept closer, gripping his sleeve. Yes, he said. And in that moment, the word felt truer than anything he had said in years. As they wheeled Naomi out into the storm, Damien lifted Leah back into his arms and followed close behind. The orphanage door swung shut behind them with a hollow thud. For the first time since he was a boy, Damien didn't look back. The hospital lights were too bright. They reflected off white walls and polished floors, making everything feel unreal, like Damien had stepped into a world where pain was neatly organized and labeled, where fear waited quietly behind closed doors. Snow still clung to his coat as he stood outside the emergency room, Leah sitting beside him in a chair far too big for her small body. She swung her legs slowly, back and forth, back and forth. Is Mommy mad at me? She asked suddenly, her voice barely louder than the hum of machines. Damien turned to her at once. Mad? No. Why would she be mad? Leah looked down at her hands. I left her. She told me to wait, but I went to find you. Damien felt something crack deep inside his chest. He crouched in front of her, bringing himself to her eye level. You didn't leave her, he said firmly. You saved her. Leah's eyes lifted, searching his face. I did. Yes, he said without hesitation. If you hadn't been brave, I wouldn't have known she needed help. You did exactly what she needed you to do. Leah thought about that for a moment, then nodded slowly, as if filing the truth away somewhere safe. A doctor stepped out through the double doors. Damien stood immediately. She's stable, the doctor said. Severe hypothermia, dehydration, and a very high fever. We're running more tests, but you got her here just in time. Damien exhaled, a breath he felt like he'd been holding since the storm began. Can we see her? He asked. The doctor nodded. Briefly. Naomi lay in a private room, surrounded by soft beeping machines and warm blankets. Color had returned faintly to her cheeks, though her face was still thin, fragile. Damien paused in the doorway, struck by how small she looked now. Leah rushed forward quietly and climbed onto the chair beside the bed, careful not to disturb any wires. Mommy, she whispered. I found him. Naomi's eyes fluttered open. When she saw Damien, confusion crossed her face, then recognition. Tears pooled instantly. You came, she breathed. I promised, he said, stepping closer. A long time ago. Her fingers trembled as she reached for his hand. He took it gently, afraid she might break. I didn't know where else to go, Naomi whispered, shame threading through her voice. I didn't even know if you'd remember me. Damien swallowed. I never forgot. She closed her eyes, relief washing over her features. Leah leaned her head against Naomi's arm, finally allowing herself to relax. Later that night, Leah fell asleep on the couch in the waiting area, wrapped in a hospital blanket, clutching a stuffed bear a nurse had brought her. Damien sat alone beside Naomi's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. Memories crept in uninvited. The orphanage winters. The way Naomi used to stand between him and the world. The bracelet he carved with shaking hands. The morning he was taken away without warning. How he searched for her face through the car window until the building disappeared. I waited, Naomi murmured softly, eyes still closed. Damien leaned forward. I know. I thought. Maybe you didn't want to be found. He shook his head. I didn't know how. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with everything they never got to say. A nurse entered quietly and adjusted Naomi's fall. "She needs rest," she said gently. "Tomorrow we'll know more." Damien nodded. As the nurse left, Naomi spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "Leah saw you in a magazine. She said you looked like someone who could help." Damien glanced toward the sleeping child. His throat tightened. "She trusted you," Naomi said, "even when I didn't trust myself anymore." Damien reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Naomi's face. "You carried everyone else for too long," he said. "Now it's my turn." Her lips trembled. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." Outside, the storm finally began to fade. Snow fell softer now, gentler, as if the night itself was releasing its grip. Damien stayed by Naomi's side until morning light crept through the blinds, until the past and present stopped fighting each other and settled into something fragile, but real. Whatever came next, he knew one thing with certainty. He wasn't walking away again. Morning arrived quietly. Pale sunlight filtered through the hospital blinds, casting thin golden lines across the floor. The storm that had trapped the town overnight had finally loosened its grip. Outside, snowplows rumbled in the distance, clearing roads, bringing the world back to life. Inside Naomi's room, Damien sat motionless, elbows resting on his knees, fingers interlaced. He hadn't slept. Every few minutes, he looked up at the monitor, watching the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, as if afraid it might suddenly disappear if he didn't. A soft knock broke the silence. The same doctor from the night before stepped in, holding a clipboard. His expression was calm, but serious. "Mr. Hale," he said, "can we talk?" Damien stood immediately. "Is she worse?" "No," the doctor replied. "But there are complications." Naomi stirred slightly at the sound of voices, her eyes opening halfway. Damien instinctively moved closer to the bed, taking her hand again. "What kind of complications?" Damien asked. The doctor took a breath. "Your friend has been sick for a while. The hypothermia was dangerous, but it wasn't the root problem. She has an untreated infection that spread because she avoided medical care for too long." Naomi turned her face away, guilt written plainly across her features. "I couldn't afford it," she whispered. "Every dollar went to Leah." Damien's jaw tightened. The doctor continued, "With proper treatment, she can recover, but it will take time. Weeks, maybe months. She'll need a safe place to stay, consistent medication, follow-up care." Damien didn't hesitate. "She'll have all of that." Naomi looked at him sharply. "Damien." He squeezed her hand gently. "Please, let me finish." The doctor nodded, clearly relieved. "Good. We'll start a stronger course of antibiotics today. She'll stay here a few more days." After the doctor left, the room fell quiet again. Naomi stared at the ceiling. "I never wanted to be a burden." "You're not," Damien said firmly. "You were never a burden. You were my shelter when I had nothing." She turned toward him, eyes shining. "You became everything they said you would. I saw you once years ago, on a screen in an electronics store. They called you a miracle." Damien let out a hollow breath. Miracles don't feel very miraculous from the inside. A small voice interrupted them. "Mommy." Leah stood in the doorway, her hair messy from sleep, a hospital blanket dragging behind her like a cape. A nurse hovered nearby, smiling softly. Naomi's face softened instantly. "Come here, baby." Leah climbed carefully onto the bed, curling against her mother's side. She looked at Damien with serious eyes. "Is Mommy going to be okay now?" Damien knelt so he was level with her. "Yes," he said, "but she needs rest. And help." Leah nodded solemnly. "I can help. I'm very good at reminding." Damien smiled for the first time in days. Later that afternoon, Damien stepped into the hallway and made a call. "Yes," he said quietly into the phone. "I need a house prepared. Not the city penthouse, the one near the lake. Staffed, warm, child-safe. Today." He paused, listening. "And cancel my meetings." All of them. I'm not leaving. When he returned, Naomi was asleep. Leah sat at a small table, coloring with crayons a volunteer had brought her. She held up the paper proudly. "This is our house," she said. "With trees. And no snow monsters." Damien swallowed. "It's perfect." As evening fell, Naomi woke again, more alert this time. She noticed Leah asleep in a chair nearby, her small chest rising and falling steadily. "You don't have to do this," Naomi said softly. "We can find a shelter. I don't want Leah growing up feeling like she owes someone." Damien looked at her, truly looked at her, the woman who once split her dinner in half so he could eat, who hid her fear so he could sleep. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is family." Tears slipped down Naomi's temples into her hair. "I was so afraid," she admitted. "Every time Leah asked about her father, every time winter came, I told myself asking for help meant failing." Damien shook his head. "Surviving isn't failing." Silence wrapped around them again, but this time it was warmer. Outside the window, the snow reflected the city lights, no longer threatening, just quiet, still. For the first time in years, Naomi allowed herself to believe something she had never dared to before. That maybe, just maybe, the worst was finally behind them. The lake house was quiet in a way Naomi had never experienced before. Not the hollow silence of empty streets or closed doors, but a living quiet, filled with warmth. Soft lights glowed beneath high ceilings. A fireplace crackled gently, pushing away the last memory of winter from the walls. Outside, the frozen lake reflected the pale sky like a sheet of glass, calm and unbroken. Naomi stood near the window, wrapped in a thick cardigan Damien had left on the chair for her. Her body was still weak, but stronger than before. Every breath no longer felt like a battle. Behind her, Leah ran across the living room, laughing as her socks slid over the polished wooden floor. "Mommy, look, I can skate inside too," she giggled. Naomi smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. Damien watched them from the doorway, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He set one beside Naomi. "You should be resting," he said gently. "I am," she replied. "This feels like rest." They stood together, side by side, not touching, yet closer than most people ever get. Later that evening, Damien knelt in front of Leah's suitcase, helping her unpack. Inside were only a few things: worn clothes, the stuffed rabbit with the torn ear, and a folded drawing. Leah picked it up. "That's from when Mommy was sick," she said softly. "I drew us a house so she wouldn't be scared." Damien unfolded it carefully. A crooked house, 3 stick figures holding hands, a sun smiling in the corner. "Can we hang it?" he asked. Leah's eyes widened. "Really?" "Right in the hallway," he said. "So everyone knows who lives here." That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. The fear crept back in quietly, like it always did. Fear that this was temporary. Fear that she'd wake up and everything would be gone. A knock came at the door. Damien stepped in slowly. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "You didn't," Naomi said. "I was already awake." He hesitated, then spoke with honesty that carried years of loneliness. "I've built companies, Naomi. I've signed deals worth more than this house. But I've never known how to build a life." She looked up at him. "I don't want Leah growing up thinking kindness comes with conditions," he continued. "So I need you to know whatever happens next, this isn't a debt. You don't owe me gratitude, or loyalty, or a future." Naomi's voice trembled. "Then why are you doing this?" Damien met her eyes. "Because a long time ago, when I was invisible, you saw me. And because Leah reminded me that love still asks, still hopes." Tears fell freely now. "I don't know how to promise anything," Naomi whispered. "You don't have to," he said. "Just stay. Heal. Let tomorrow arrive on its own." From the hallway, a sleepy voice murmured, "Mommy." Leah stood there rubbing her eyes. Naomi opened her arms instantly, and the little girl climbed into her lap. Are we staying here forever? Leah asked. Naomi looked at Damien. He crouched beside them. As long as you want. Leah thought very seriously, then nodded. Okay, but Mommy smiles more here. So we should. Naomi laughed through her tears, holding her daughter close. Outside, the ice on the lake began to crack, not breaking, just shifting, preparing for spring. Some endings are loud. But this one arrived softly. With warmth. With choice. With a little girl who believed. And with two broken adults who finally understood that family doesn't always begin with love. Sometimes, it begins with mercy. If you're enjoying the stories of Midnight Love chapters, make sure to subscribe and stay connected with the channel. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters. Your one like and one subscribe can truly help this channel grow and move forward.